Dobro večer, poštovani dragi gledatelji, dobrodošli još jedan na jedan. Često se o Brexitu priča na različite moguće načine, ali nikada zapravo nitko nije doveo nekakvog londonskog stručnjaka da nam kaže kako Brexit izgleda iz ekonomske perspektive. Zato sam to naravno napravio ja i sa nama je David Blanchard. Dobro večer.
Dobro večer.
Dobrodošli. Nadam se da izgovaram vaše francusko prezime korektno. Meni je francuski jedan od najtežih jezika. Sam sebi sam smiješan kad govorim francuski, kad pokušavam bilo šta kazati boljim riječima. No, unaprijed, eto, moja isprika ako krivo izgovaram vaše prezime. U svakom slučaju, hvala vam što ste našli vremena i došli iz Londona u ovu emisiju. Vi ste radili u SAD-u, na Wall Streetu, radite i radili ste u Londonskom Cityu i smatrao sam da, a kako imate iskustva rada naravno širom svijeta, da je savršena naravno prigoda sa vama porazgovaramo o Brexitu iz te perspektive. Jasno i o nekim okolnim pitanjima. Pa krenimo u temu. Dakle, je li Brexit loša odluka Britanaca gledano iz perspektive Cityja?
It's a surprising decision to start with. Just to remind you that London has voted Remain, most of it. There was London, Scotland and Northern Ireland. I will give you an anecdote. The morning of the results, I popped in the office early because there was already a huge volatility in the market. And one of my colleagues who actually were working for a French entity, so a European entity, I asked him, he was English from Essex, and I asked him, what is it all about? What happened? And he said, I don't know. I voted leave, but I never thought it would happen. I said, so why did you vote leave? Because I had to. I'm English. Oh. And from that day and onward till now, I had a strange perception that Brexit is not an action. Brexit is a feeling. And all the financial community was absolutely surprised. The volatility in the following days was huge. The pound lost 30% at one stage of its value from the day just before the vote. Banks' share went tumbling, down 25%. It was a real mess. But what happened after is the English tried to reassure us. Don't worry, nothing will change. Which was, in some ways, a way for them to make us still, first of all, invest in the City of London, into the platform of trading and broking. And of course, they didn't want us to make a contingent plan and to leave the country straight away. They want to keep the business. But coming back to my trader, who was sitting next to me and telling me, I voted leave, but I didn't think it would happen, knowing that he was my employee, I was a French entity, his salary was coming from Paris, paid, of course, through the London Channel. I found it absolutely spectacular as how English can behave sometimes and how this Brexit was a complete idea, but without any preparation. And God knows that England has had some, United Kingdom have had a very, very complicated relationship with Europe over the past 50 years. They kept a single statute with their own currency, with quite a wide independence from Europe. But still, that didn't mean that they didn't enjoy this huge space of trade, this huge space of business. And the other point was the fact that Farage, a European deputy, was the leader of all of it, was making us question just the fact that, you know, no plan. The guy who's running the Brexit party is a Euro deputy. Where is it all going? And this was a surprise.
Da se naši gledatelji obavijeste do kraja, gospodin Blanchard je rođen i školovan u Francusku, ali karijeru odmah započeo u Londonu i u Britaniji, tako da ne govori kao europejac i izvana kao outsider, nego kao insider. Pa budući da, to je važno i zbog sljedećeg pitanja, budući da poznajete obje strane, recite mi, tko je lošije prošao? Europska unija ili Britanija?
Well, that's a good question. So far, we only hear about the dramatisation at the Parliament. We do not hear about any dramatisation, maybe except one or two at the European Parliament about Brexit. So I would say without a doubt that as per the consequences we don't know, but after 3.5 years of trying to process and create this Brexit, because nobody knew what actually the articulation of Brexit was and would be, and we still don't know actually, there is still no deal, I would say that it's more of an embarrassment for the English rather than a headache for the European.
Ali u poslovnom smislu, da li se nešto ozbiljno događa već sada?
For the banking industry, for the banking industry, it's very simple. First of all, Brexit has been detrimental. Okay, there's not been any added value for any European or English financial actor, except some hedge funds who made some bets on the pounds and some stock. But let's put this apart. I'm talking about the industry employing the banking industry, the broking industry. Nobody has benefited from this in Europe or in England, and the big beneficiary of this were the American banks, just to start with. To give you, to put some numbers there, since May 16, on average, the share of European banks have gone up since that day to today around between 0 to 20%, depending on the banks. And if you take any average American bank, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, Citibank, their shares have doubled, so plus 100%. So that gives you, in some ways, a big break that Brexit put, the referendum put on our business, us European and English, within the banking industry. Now, having said that, the first reaction, of course, of the banks was to prepare a contingent plan, because, of course, everybody was hoping for a deal, but nobody knew if there was going to be a deal or not, so contingent plan for no deal. And contingent plan for no deal means that you know that if there is no deal, from one day to another, any European person from London talking to a European continental customer has to stop if there is no deal. Because the transaction can only be valid if they talk to one another from the continent. The reason being because with no deal there is no financial passport. So therefore, banks have been working, spending money on consultancy, on auditing, on creativity of plans to circumspect this aspect of the financial passport. It costed a lot of money. And the only way it's been profitable to the bank was that they used this Brexit no deal scenario to do the transformation they were supposed to be doing to save cost and money amongst their staff. So Brexit triggered contingent plan and spending money which was at loss for the banks, but at the same time they took the opportunity of those contingent plans to just reduce the workforce and be more efficient. One number, 1,000 jobs as of today have been accounted from moving from England to Europe, to continental Europe, within the banking industry. It costed only 1,000 jobs, Brexit in itself.
Najavljivana je katastrofa zapravo i katastrofalne posljedice. Jednako tako najavljivano je da će se preseliti financijsko središte zapravo iz Londona u Frankfurt ili u Pariz. Recite mi, je li jedno i drugo izostalo i je li moguće da se City preseli u Pariz ili Frankfurt?
It's a quick answer. No, it's impossible. You cannot. You can, of course, try to reorganize some relationships outside of London. But over my career, and before that, English, through Thatcher, the day Thatcher decided to deregulate and offer tax incentive for people to come to London to work in the financial industry, from that day onward, English and the City of London have been very, very, very smart to create such a liquidity within the financial market that to try to catch up with this amount of liquidity, you want to buy or sell anything within the financial world, you talk to somebody in London, you will get a price within a minute or a second. You want to do the same thing out of Paris, Frankfurt, or Milan, they don't have the liquidity, they don't have the people, they don't have the connection, they don't have the reach out to customers. They will go through London, or they will go through Wall Street, or they will go through Hong Kong, through Dubai, but it will not happen on its own. Now, one thing is the computerization of the business. You could think that...
Sam htio pitati, što to London ima, a drugi nemaju?
It's a place of business. I mean, when you think about...
Ili, recimo, ako koliko bi trebalo, ja ne navijam da se sada City premjesti, izmjesti, ali rekli ste mi sada vrlo izravno nemoguće cijelu tu zajednicu zbog cijelog ovog ekosistema, ali je li ga moguće kreirati, recimo, u 5 godina, recimo, u Frankfurtu? Frankfurt je ipak nekako financijsko središte.
Of course it is. I mean, all decisions from the ECB are taken out of Frankfurt. But if you look at Dubai, for example, as a financial center, Dubai has been trying over the past 10 years, since the financial crisis in 2008, to attract more and more of the London business and the American business and the hedge fund business from all around the world to Dubai. And the way they tried to do it was, first of all, through a tax incentive. Unfortunately, while they were successful at creating an ecosystem within the Middle East and Africa and as a platform of flows between Asia and the Western world, they cannot replace the liquidities that the City of London have been creating for the past 45 years. They cannot, simply cannot. It's a culture. You cannot transplant a culture from one place to another. Let's talk about, for people to understand maybe better this, for a more general approach, the car market. The car market in England is far more liquid than in France or Germany. Why is that? Because they have the mentality that it doesn't matter if the price is going up or down. It's liquid. We make a business. One day it will go up, one day it will go down. It's important to transact, because the more you transact, the more you reflect the trend. And the more you reflect the trend, the more people come to you, because they are more ready to accept a little decrease or an increase on their value of their car, rather than if there is never any price and everybody is stuck high on the offer and low on the bid. So English have this, or the Anglo-Saxon world has this particularity to always try to go for the trade much harder than any other country. It's in their mentality. That's what they are good at. It's their definition. It's their banking. That's what they've been doing forever. Not only in the last 20th century. Before that, when they were sending ships in the 18th century by giving a credit to the captain of a few ships to go all around the world and bring back whatever he could, spices, animals, whatever. And when they would come back, they would need to trade everything that was on the boat to reimburse the credit letter that was given to them. So, of course, it was a necessity, but that was the success of the business. Success of the business is not only to bring back everything or to be, to have lost any ship or whatever. The success of the business is to be able to create a liquidity that will buy and sell anything you bring back, and you don't know what you're going to bring back.
Kakav je odnos City prema Borisu Johnsonu?
Well, Boris Johnson was the mayor of London, first of all, and a successful one. I think that the relationship between Neaton boy, such as Boris Johnson, and all the hedge fund and the money managers, I would say, around the world, is good. Is definitely a reflection from the Tory party of somebody who likes money, and likes people making money. So I think that it's excellent. Where it's a bit contradictory, and that's where I would say the schism between Boris Johnson and the city happened, is when on the Sunday, a few weeks before the referendum, he decided to go for the Leave party, which was not really understood from anybody, except that it was a political career-motivated move, which would end up in what we know. And today, I would say that the city is quite confident that with a deal or with no deal, Boris Johnson will do, if he's still there, will do its best to reconcile the city with the rest of the world and increase the amount of money that can be done in the city.
Uveo sam Borisa u igru zato što me zanima jesu li za financijski svijet uopće on, Trump, pa i sam Brexit toliko važni koliko za samu politiku?
Not yet. Trump is. Boris Johnson is still trying to articulate something that he seems to have been improvising a few years ago and became reality. That's not only a personal opinion, that's really what the idea of Boris Johnson Brexit is right now. In terms of his impact on the financial world, so far the way I think of Boris Johnson is a guy that as soon as Brexit is done, it will offer definitely a tax incentive, like Thatcher did, to make sure that the business is kept, the financial business is kept in London. But just, by the way, to put things into perspective, finance and insurance is 8% of the GDP of England. Okay, so Boris Johnson has to, of course, take care of them, but at the same time, there is still another 92% to take care of. So he will, I think, be a friend. He will be, once, if he's still there, once again, once Brexit is done, if it's done, I think he will be very influential and he will do everything to put some positive perspective of the City of London. But as opposed to Trump, Trump is, I would call him an agitator. He's a volatility maker. And the financial markets are living out of volatility. Volatility is the blood of the financial market. If there is no volatility, there is no reason to have 200 traders lined up in front of screens, buying and selling all day long. Volatility is what makes you and me, when we wake up in the morning and we are traveling somewhere in a country and we see that the currency is worth X and was much higher a few years ago, it was going to that country because our holidays are going to be cheap, for example. Example of Turkey recently. So Trump is a volatility generator. Whether he understands and measures how volatile things are going to be after his tweet at 6 o'clock in the morning or his 2-3 tweets at 6 o'clock in the morning from the White House, I'm not sure. And that's what the world is always commentating about him. The guy is dangerous. That's what we hear all the time. But at the same time, there is good volatility very often, and bad volatility sometimes, bad volatility being the one you can really not control, you can really not forecast. So for example, from one day to another, withdrawing from Syria could have had a very bad volatility impact on the currencies of Turkey versus dollar, for example. But at the end, Trump is a politician, and what he wants to see is the poll in his favor. So, of course, a market going up like it has been in the US for the past, since the beginning of his presidency or even his campaign, is an incredible result that he will be proudly endorse as the result of his political actions. And you saw in the past, this year and last year, that every time the Fed was not acting in favor of Wall Street, i.e. not lowering rates the way they should be or he thought they would be doing so, Trump would accuse, of course, the Federal Reserve of what was happening in the market.
Slijedi li nam nekakva nova kriza? O tome se stalno govori, ali jednostavno imam dojam da je riječ o nekakvim nagađanjima i gonetanjima prije nego o nekim egzaktnim tvrdnjama. Koji je vaš dojam, budući da ste tako dolazite iz srca financijske industrije?
So you're asking about the financial crisis or a crisis?
Financijska.
Financial. Well, let's put it that way.
Ova druga stalno traje.
Yeah, but okay. Financial crisis is, first of all, something that when you're a trader or when you're a manager in a bank or at a hedge fund or whatever, every morning when you wake up, That's your first thought. Have I done the right things? Is the picture of the market this morning telling me that I am well prepared, that my risk is the right way, in the right pocket, that my customer can absorb what I've got in my books? I mean, all these kind of things, you know, is an everyday discipline exercise. When you wake up in the morning, on your way to the office, whether it takes half an hour, 1 hour, you are already, and that's your job. So let's be very clear. Since 2008, where banks, it was the moment where banks were caught creating some products that they did not necessarily understand. Since that day, the regulator work from the central banks, from all the compliance desks around the world, have been working on controlling the bank, on their capital ratio, on the exposure they were selling to people, on the product they were selling to people, and so on and so forth. And I would say that since 2008, very little new products have been created in the financial market. So on that side, I think we are pretty safe, except one, which is called ETF. It's a synthetic representation of any market. So basically, if you want to be exposed to, let's say, Croatian shares, the Croatian market, you ask a bank, instead of calling Zagreb, the stock exchange, and say, I want to buy all these shares one by one, and you buy me 10, 20, whatever, you call a bank and you say, listen, I want an exposure to the Croatian market. So the bank will say, okay, buy this ETF Croatia. And what they do is they just replicate the same exposure. So if the Croatian market goes up, your instrument, the one you bought from the bank, goes up the same way. And if it goes down the same way. Now, the only problem is that they managed to do it through very complex and very powerful computerized models. And now the problem is it's been so successful that the amount of exposure to those ETFs that banks have sold around the world is more than 1,000 times the size of the actual market. So which means that basically, if one day somebody wants to liquidate its position on the ETF, and at the same time you have another 100 sellers, I'm not sure that the market will be able to absorb this oversized synthetic exposure compared to the actual size of the market. That's one thing. Now, in terms of financial, so that could lead to panic and that could lead to bad volatility, the one we cannot forecast, the one generated by just an oversized market that went too big on the synthetic compared to the actual size. The other thing is, there are a few things let's say the financial world has allowed the real economy to do over the past 10 years. One of those is the private debt, so all the companies' debt around the world has doubled. So to give you some key figures, in 2008, there was let's say around 7 trillion of debt from companies. Today, there are 13 trillion worth of debt. This debt has to be reimbursed. So you can imagine that in the low interest rate environment we're living in, if tomorrow one central bank decides to raise rates, you will see a huge amount of debt picking up, having such a big impact on the balance sheet of those companies that it could trigger a systemic risk. So that's definitely a systemic risk to look out for. The other thing is negative interest rates. Mm-hmm. Not everybody knows, but if you today, Germany, for example, if you give them 100 euro today investing in their risk, the country's sovereign risk, in 1 year, they give you back 99. Okay, 99 euros. And you're supposed to be happy with it because it's the safest investment around the world today, so they say. That's negative interest rate. How can we survive and how can we handle, and it's been going on in Japan for the past 35 years, but what does it mean for the actual economy, negative interest rate? We don't know, it's an unknown territory. In such a big zone, the European zone, 580 million people, the biggest trading partner in the world, bigger than China, bigger than anybody else, we have negative interest rates.
Htio sam popiti vode, ali prvo da vas ipak pitam. Vi ste napustili u jednom trenutku svijet financija. Ne znam je li to zbog što ste se zasitili ili ne, ali kad komparirate, nije ni važno, to su vaši privatni rezoni, kad komparirate tadašnji, recimo, svijet, spominjali smo vrijeme recesije i današnji, je li svijet financija, držite se sada, je li jednako pokvaren kao što je bio 2008. Znao sam da će...
Really corrupt.
Da.
I mean, you need to be careful with the word corrupt because the financial world...
Možda u moralnom smislu. Znate, greed is good.
Okay. Because there's been, like, in any industry, some people who misbehaved. But there was, I mean, I don't see financial markets as being corrupted at any time for the past 20 years. Anyway, greedy, yes, of course. I mean, this is a money business. You know, they make money, nothing else. So, of course, today's banks are, you know, reinterpreting investments. So the big bank I used to work for, that I'm still following and I'm still very proud of in some ways, is selling a lot of, turning his asset management into green, into sustainable. So you have those new words appearing which sound much better. And at the end of the day, it's true that if you know that you are invested in technologies that are better, supposedly better for the environment, you feel better, and it looks like it's creating a trend, and things are going up for you because they are creating a trend. But it doesn't change the fact that they are doing it to make money. So, and I mean, we don't have a problem with that. That's the financial world. What has changed from those days is, to give you an example, when in 2004, 5, 6, it was complicated in London to hire some young people because the best talents, the best brains were snapped straight away into the US, offered some much bigger package. I couldn't, you know, every time I was trying to hire somebody, I had a student from Cambridge or a guy from MIT talking to me. I was very interested in his profile. He knew nothing about the financial market. There is only one thing he knew. At the end of the interview, he should ask what would be his bonus. And every time I was asked, what is going to be my bonus? I was like, but you're a very nice guy, you're very smart, and I would love to hire you, but what bonus are you talking about? You know nothing. He said, well, because they told me that that's the way it is. What has changed is that today, all those young kids who are coming out of school and are as clever as the old ones, they don't have this arrogance. They are much more down to earth. They know that they are going into a system. And that proves that the system has changed as well, meaning that those huge bonuses that, you know, a young guy of 28 years old could get after having worked for 3 years and having had a good year, he would receive a bonus. He would not even understand himself why the bonus would be so big. It was only, in fact, a consequence of a very, very profitable business. Everybody was making money. And as they say, it's better to be average in a very successful environment than to be the most clever guy in a falling environment. So that's what was happening. Today, we know that the environment is very mitigated. So the banks and any financial actor is constructing, articulating the remuneration around many more criteria, and it will take at least 10 years to start making money. But still, the goal is to make the same money.
Nasmijao sam se ove opasci da je bolje biti prosječan u sjajnom biznisu nego pametan u, da ne govorim kakvom biznisu. Postoji li neki
business-wise.
Naravno. Postoji li neki mogući pozitivan ishod Brexita?
Yeah, I think there are positive outcomes of Brexit. The first one, it shows that we can be prepared. We can prepare, I mean, banks can prepare themselves. The financial world can prepare itself and work around any incredible, unplanned scenario. And today, if you look at the results, I mean, European banks have underperformed massively American banks. But today, they are on the catch-up. Why? Because they spent the last 3.5 years working around all the possibilities. And those scenarios will help for the future. So that's an important fact. The positive side as well is, I would say that politics are less and less relevant to the actual people. And in England, I think that it's very important to follow what's going on between the Parliament and the Prime Minister, because it looks like people have understood the fact that a Prime Minister wants to endorse being the deal maker for Brexit. And he came at the end of the run after Theresa May did 2 years as a PM and proposed 3 times a deal and was very close and supposedly had the mayor deal that he has today. And today the Parliament is still saying, let's wait. You cannot be the one endorsing and being the one seen as making the Brexit deal. It has to be the Parliament, it has to be the people. And the people today are being, the only positive thing I can say is that the people today are being offered another choice. On the 12th of December for the new election in England. So that means that they will have the choice, depending on their vote, and to either go through or rethink. And that shows that a stupid question, which was this referendum, and it was really, really unprepared and completely improvised. People said yes. People saw that it couldn't be delivered. And now asking the question, why did you ask us if you don't know how? And now, the thing that's coming out through the blockade of Parliament is, okay, let's do it again. Let's put it in a different way to make sure that we can get it.
Otkud danas krenuti u biznisu? Gdje je najbolja poslovna klima?
The cloud. The cloud is, I think that I have this kind of idea that when you see all the young kids today, they have absolutely not the same reflexes that I had or my parents had or just the generation after me had. They don't care. They can live anywhere as long as they have the cloud. So I think that anything that is going to develop some kind of life for those kids in the cloud can be an IT space where you can store things, develop applications or whatever, but you can even think that you can colonize space by having people plugged into the clouds on a daily basis and spend 2 years traveling around whatever planet. As long as they have the cloud, they're happy. And I don't know if you look at young kids today, but they can be in the Seychelles or in Croatia or in the bloodiest, worst place in London. As long as they have a connection, it doesn't matter. So next business, I think, would be the cloud for me.
Bojite li se vi, dečki iz City-a i s Wall Streeta, Kine?
How not to be afraid of China? You know when they say no. Of course, I mean, the growth, yearly growth of 6% for the past 10 years or more, 6% or more. I mean, who knows what's going on with China? The thing that I see with China, it's debt, private, domestic plus household, is now equal or higher to 300%, which means that of their GDP, which means that this overall debt, it's 3 times what they are creating as revenues in 1 year, which is, you know, for such a huge country, the best, for me, the best recipe for instability. And so far, it looks like they have been stable and everything is controlled. But, you know, what do we know? Entering into business with China, buying equities in China is only very recent. They do not allow you a loan market in China. It's only very, very recent. As European or Western, from the Western world, we are only allowed, and on some certain very controlled companies, allowed to buy exposure to Chinese companies. So I think that there is a transparency issue, which is obvious, and which for the size of the country and the size of the trading partners that they are, is extremely frightening, yes.
Recite mi, je li Trump pokrenuo ekonomiju?
What, sorry?
Da li Trump pokrenuo ekonomiju? Njemu se pripisuje ovaj ekonomski napredak SAD-a kojem danas svjedočimo.
Well, I think that Trump has done something absolutely amazing for the American. He has revived their motivation. The American dream is on, full on. And you know the big difference between being French and I mean hiring French employees and hiring American employees is that in 2008 I would come on the trading floor in Paris and I would see all those guys saying, "It's the end." And I would do the day after the same trading environment in New York, and it would already start about the stories they were going to say for the next interview, which means that when you have this capacity to absorb the bad vibes by reviving a dream, that it doesn't matter that you're living in poverty or in difficult circumstances now, you're already working on the stories that one day will make you what you want to be and satisfy you, is definitely what Trump has brought to the Americans and to the economy. And I think the economy has gained some productivity because of that.
Recite mi, evo, tu smo pri kraju, pa da završimo onda jednim pitanjem koje smo načeli u jednom trenutku. U kojoj mjeri politika, kad stalno govorimo o Trump, Boris Johnson, Kina i tako dalje, a s druge strane Wall Street i City, u kojoj mjeri politika određuje svijet financija i financijska zbivanja?
Huge. It's huge. You cannot... I mean, finance is only responding and positioning itself to what they hear, what they see, what they understand in how a country is managed. So don't think as finance as leading. Finance is an answer that tries to create money out of the circumstances. So when Trump accuses the governor of the Fed of not doing his job and to fire him, you can see that there is a big independence between the two, and that he doesn't care attacking him officially, which is something you would never see. I mean, it happened a little bit between the governor of the Central Bank of England and the Prime Minister in place at the time, but I think only because he was Canadian, the governor of the England Central Bank. But I think that there is an independence, and I think that one is answering to the other and adapting and trying to do the best. And the thing that politicians, especially in the Western world, try to avoid doing is to make the financial world live, because you need it, no matter what.
Hvala lijepo što ste bili moj gost večeras. Hvala lijepo što ste se odazvali pozivu. Nadam se da će biti prigode još koji puta razgovarati. Dragi gledatelji, hvala vama što ste bili sa nama i još jednom u 1 na 1. Gledajte nas naravno i sljedeći put, sljedećega ponedjeljka, a do tada lijep pozdrav i doviđenja.